Have you ever tried traveling without opening Google Maps or Waze? Yeah, immediate panic sets in. It's like you're a character in The Last of Us, completely out of ammo, right? Now imagine living 2,000 years ago, a time without internet, without GPS signals, and, surprise, without actual maps. How on earth did ancient people manage to get from one place to another without eternally wandering in circles around trees and rocks? Well, spoiler alert, they weren't as lost as you might think. In fact, ancient folks traveled with more confidence than you walking down your hallway at night. Seriously, while you freak out when your app says, recalculating route, Romans were casually crossing their entire empire from north to south with zero anxiety, and probably complaining less than you on a road trip to the beach without cell reception. To them, traveling was like having a permanent RPG minimap in their heads. Yup, in ancient Rome, fast travel was done with their legs, and the GPS was literally that old bearded guy at the front of the caravan who'd taken that route about 200 times before. Today, you might argue with the Waze lady telling you, turn left, even though there's only one street. Meanwhile, your average Roman citizen relied entirely on memory, observation, and the advice of historical influencers, experienced travelers, merchants, and soldiers. So, relax. If your Waze crashes someday, maybe we'll rediscover that ancient Roman instinct of navigating using nothing but brains and a pinch of faith. Or, maybe not. But hey, at least we still have Wi-Fi. If you're the kind of person who forgets the route home after a single wrong turn, I've got bad news for you. You would not have survived ancient navigation. Seriously, back then, your brain needed to be a GPS on steroids. No screens, no voice assistant saying, in 500 feet, turn right. Nope. Just your good old-fashioned memory. People in ancient times were hardcore about memorizing directions. It was like a really intense game of Assassin's Creed, except instead of leaping gracefully between rooftops, you'd spend hours walking, paddling, or riding through terrains while carefully noting every single detail. Forget those little street view images we have today. Instead, you'd be memorizing things like, at the weird-shaped rock, take a left. After the haunted-looking tree, keep right. And how did they remember all that? Oral tradition. Directions were passed down through songs, stories, and poetry. Imagine an Uber Eats delivery person who doesn't just know every alley in the city, they actually sing about it, Broadway musical style. Polynesians, for example, navigated thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean using the stars, ocean currents, and even flight patterns of birds. Meanwhile, indigenous people in dense jungles used subtle clues like animal tracks, smells, and sounds. Basically, every detail mattered, no matter how small. In short, ancient folks had mental maps so vivid, they'd make today's influencers jealous. These maps didn't need Wi-Fi or updates. They updated every time someone shared a new story around the campfire. Honestly, compared to that, your average Google Maps update feels a bit boring, right? Now, if memorizing entire continents sounds overwhelming to you, relax. Ancient folks weren't all walking encyclopedias. Just like today, most travelers depended heavily on the original travel influencers, experienced guides, merchants, and soldiers. Think of these people as the human version of Google Maps. They didn't have millions of followers on Instagram, but trust me, they were much more reliable. Take the Silk Road, for example. Traveling it without a seasoned guide was like playing Elden Ring blindfolded. Possible, but probably painful and extremely frustrating. So, you'd hire someone who had already survived the route multiple times. They'd tell you exactly where to find water, the safest places to rest, and, most importantly, where not to stop unless you enjoyed being robbed or meeting an early end like a character from The Boys. Ancient caravans weren't just groups traveling together. They were teams relying on veteran travelers who knew the road better than you know your Netflix password. Phoenician sailors, Roman messengers, and Bedouin desert guides all made a living precisely because they had mastered routes others found impossible. Picture them as the uber-black drivers of antiquity. They knew exactly where the comfortable inns were, which roads were safe, and how to avoid traffic. Meaning bandits, storms, or Roman legionaries having a bad day. These influencers didn't get likes or retweets, but they definitely got respect, and probably a lot of free meals. So next time your Waze crashes and you're helplessly circling the block, spare a thought for those ancient navigators who could find their way without satellite signals. just a sharp memory, sharp eyes, and maybe a sharp sword. Today, we obsessively follow the blue line on our phones, panicking if it disappears for half a second. Ancient travelers, though, they were absolute pros at reading the landscape itself. No battery, no panic, no endless buffering. Nature itself was their navigation app. Back in Rome, for instance, they had literal milestones. Big stone markers telling you exactly how far you were from major cities. Imagine those highway signs on American roads like, next gas station, 200 miles. But more like, Rome, 12 miles ahead, brought to you by Emperor Augustus. Glory to Rome. Pretty subtle advertising, right? But it wasn't just man-made markers. Everything from unique mountains to weirdly shaped trees became ancient navigation points. You know that one McDonald's you always remember to turn left at, or the Starbucks where you always stop. Ancient travelers had their own versions, a distinctive rock, a weird-looking bush, or even a river crossing notorious for crocodiles. Vikings famously navigated by recognizing the shape of coastlines, specific islands, and ocean currents. It was basically real-life Assassin's Creed, Valhalla, minus the conveniently marked glowing checkpoints. And unlike your GPS, these landmarks didn't glitch or lose signal because of bad weather. Well, unless a volcano exploded, cough cough, Pompeii. The landmarks were reliable because, well, mountains rarely move around, and rivers don't spontaneously vanish. It was practical, visual, and highly effective. Plus, let's be real. Getting instructions like, turn left at the giant angry-looking mountain, is way cooler than a robot voice telling you to make a U-turn where it's obviously illegal. Now, imagine your GPS broke down mid-road trip. What's your backup plan? Probably desperately trying to remember vague landmarks, muttering things like, past the sketchy gas station, then it's 2 rights after the burger place. Congratulations! You've just reinvented ancient navigation. Back in the old days, instead of having neatly drawn maps, people used text-based itineraries. Think of it as ancient Google Maps, minus, the actual map. One of the most famous examples is the Antonine Itinerary, a Roman era list that basically said, go straight for 30 miles, turn at the Big Rock, pass Corfinium, avoid the barbarian camp. Sounds practical, right? Well, it was, at least until someone moved the Big Rock. Then there's the Tabula Peutingeriana, essentially a super long, medieval scroll version of a map, more symbolic than geographically accurate. It's basically what you'd get if you combined an IKEA manual with your notes from history class. Messy, confusing, but somehow useful if you squint hard enough. These lists weren't pretty, but they worked because the logic was clear. Travel from one known place to the next known place, step by step, kind of like a quest list from Skyrim or The Witcher. Sure, you wouldn't get that helpful voice saying, in 300 meters, prepare to turn left. But at least you wouldn't end up circling aimlessly around ancient Rome at 3 a.m., lost and confused. So next time you're annoyed your map app is slow or your phone overheats, remember this. Your ancestors conquered entire empires with nothing but a list that said, follow the road until you find the village famous for dates, then keep walking for 2 more days. If they did it, maybe there's hope for you too. Hey Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you love historical curiosities, epic battles, crazy mysteries, and mind-blowing stories that most people don't know about, then hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you won't miss any of our new videos and can keep uncovering insane facts every week. And of course, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you even more awesome content. Alright, let's jump back into history. Okay, let's be honest, ancient navigation wasn't always smooth sailing. Sure, the Romans, Vikings, and Polynesians knew their routes like a veteran Uber driver on New Year's Eve. But sometimes, things went spectacularly wrong. Imagine your internal GPS suddenly glitching out worse than Cyberpunk 2077 at launch. Without maps, misinformation was as common as clickbait today. Travelers often relied on sketchy local tips, rumors, or supposed shortcuts that turned out to be dead ends, or worse, traps. Picture yourself as a medieval merchant confidently following advice from the ancient equivalent of an NPC from Dark Souls, only to find yourself waist-deep in a swamp, surrounded by bandits. And just like your dad stubbornly insisting he knows the shortcut to avoid traffic, spoiler, he doesn't, many ancient travelers confidently plunged into disastrous detours. Historical texts are filled with tragic tales of caravans stuck in deserts because someone swore the oasis was just over that dune, or sailors misled by fake lighthouse signals set by pirates, basically the world's worst practical joke. But despite these mishaps, the ancient navigation system had built-in disaster tolerance. People traveled in groups for a reason. When your memory glitched, someone else's usually kicked in. Routes changed with seasons, floods, droughts, or invasions. It was like constantly recalculating routes, but without a friendly robotic voice calmly reassuring you. So next time your GPS slightly delays your trip, spare a thought for ancient travelers whose version of a small delay might mean a week stuck in mud, bargaining with angry barbarians, or desperately wondering why you ever trusted that shady guy who promised an easy shortcut. Makes missing your freeway exit seem not so bad. Huh? Alright, so far we've figured out ancient folks didn't need paper maps because their maps were in their heads. But here's the craziest part. Their idea of geography wasn't even visual. It was functional. Confused. Let me explain. When you travel today, your GPS shows you exactly where you are on a cute little virtual globe. Cool, right? Well, ancient people couldn't care less about knowing precisely where they were on Earth. Their main priority was knowing how long it took to get somewhere, and if there was food or water waiting at the end. Basically, it was like traveling from one Starbucks to the next. Who cares where exactly it is, as long as you can get a coffee? For example, rather than saying, it's 50 miles southwest, an ancient traveler might tell you, it's 2 days' walk past the village where they sell amazing dates. Directions were functional and practical, like quest logs from The Witcher. Go east until the giant cactus, then north till you reach the angry camel farm. This functional geography meant the landscape itself was alive with meaning. Mountains weren't just big rocks. They were landmarks that told you exactly how much longer you had to suffer under the scorching sun. Rivers weren't just scenic. They were critical rest stops, vending machines provided by nature itself. Everything had a practical purpose. So, imagine trying to attend a party today where everyone knows exactly how to get there, but nobody knows the actual address. That's ancient navigation in a nutshell. It sounds chaotic, yet it was surprisingly efficient. Mostly because nobody wasted time zooming out to check if they'd missed an exit. You just kept going until you found the party, or the next watering hole. Alright, after all that, here's the big twist ending. Despite not having GPS, Wi-Fi, or even those cool little maps at tourist info booths, ancient travelers were way more organized than you'd imagine. Seriously, their navigation system makes our frantic dependence on satellite signals look almost embarrassing. Think about it. They navigated oceans, deserts, and continents without getting hopelessly lost. Usually. How? By turning the whole world into a living, breathing navigation app. Stories, landmarks, and human experience filled the gap that Google Maps occupies today. Imagine never stressing about losing signal, because your navigation relied solely on observation, memory, and the advice of the human equivalent of Baby Yoda, older, wiser travelers who had done it all before. This system wasn't just efficient. It created deep connections between people and places. The landscape itself spoke to travelers, guiding them step by step. Rivers, trees, mountains, and villages became chapters in a travel story told again and again. Who needs maps when the whole planet itself is telling you exactly where to go next? Now, the million-dollar question. Could you survive in a world without Google Maps? Or would you be that person hopelessly wandering around Pompeii, asking for directions right before the volcano blew? Honestly, most of us probably wouldn't last a day without our digital crutches. But hey, maybe it's time to practice reading a real landmark once in a while. So next time your GPS glitches, take a deep breath and channel your inner Roman traveler. Or, just restart your phone and hope for the best. Either way, respect your ancient ancestors. They were navigating the globe way before it was cool. So, what have we learned today? Mainly that humans have always been surprisingly good at getting where they need to go. No GPS satellites required. Ancient navigation wasn't just about memorizing landmarks or relying on experienced travelers. It was about turning the whole world into one giant interactive map. Kind of like open-world games today, except real, way more dangerous, and without save points. And while modern technology makes navigation ridiculously easy, thank you, Google Maps, for literally keeping civilization intact, maybe we've gotten just a tiny bit lazy. Could you imagine the chaos if everyone's phone suddenly went dark for one day? It'd be like watching an episode of The Boys. Fun for a minute, then pure panic. So, here's a challenge for you. Next time you go somewhere familiar, try to switch off your GPS. See if you can channel your inner Viking, Roman, or Polynesian navigator. Or, at least try not to panic when your phone battery hits 10%. But now, I want to know from you. Do you think you'd survive navigating the ancient way? Or would you be the person stuck forever asking the shady merchant NPC for directions? Tell us down in the comments. And hey, if you get lost, just remember, keep going straight until you hit the weird-shaped rock. Until next time, stay curious, and maybe keep a backup paper map in the glove box, just in case.